This is the channel where faith and vision collide to bring forth a manifestation. You're watching the Vision Channel. You ready? Listen, we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in tonight on SpiritRadio.co on the Vision Channel Live. Listen, there are many things tonight that we're going to discuss. And I believe that tonight that we're going to probably conclude what we were discussing. You know, last week we did I'm going to probably do a little small recap based on what we talked about, sex. And I think a lot of times in relationships, why marriages go south, why things go bad, is because this one topic. And I believe that we don't have discussions about marriage or about sex long enough because we look to perform and not to discuss. And so we think about that before marriage, and we don't get into topics about behaviors, patterns of behaviors, what people truly desire. We don't have those conversations. And because we don't have those conversations, we struggle when it comes into the relationship. And I said this, and I'm giving you like a recap of last week. We talked about you don't want to marry a Solomon. So Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. So that was his appetite. So in order for them to be a wife in the Old Testament, that person had to sleep with that individual. So he had to physically have some kind of physical contact with the person in order to consummate the marriage for that person to call or consider that individual his wife. So he had an appetite, and you don't want to get in a relationship or get married to somebody that has an appetite or a desire to want to have sex all the time, and you only want to have it one time. You're fine with one, but that person has the appetite of 700. Or David himself. So, or you can even have, or you start talking about, for that, you don't want to marry a Rahab that has had a lot of men. Yeah, big time hoochie mama. And we never have these conversations. So when we get into marriages, because we didn't have the conversation, the marriage itself end up in a crisis. And we don't know what to do in the crisis because we can't control that person, because we consider that individual out of control. And that person say, I got married, I did it wrong, but I'm doing it right, but I can't do it in marriage. And I think that's what causes a lot of confusion, a lot of commotion, and it causes divorce, and it causes people to cheat. And so people cheat. They may not be cheating physically, but they've cheated spiritually. And if they cheat spiritually, according to scriptures, then you know that that relationship is in trouble, because they go into cheating not just with a physical person by watching a physical person, thinking about a physical person, but they end up having individuality, sex with pornography. Yep. So they don't consider the other person. And what happens in those relationships, if those relationships don't last long, because they end up venturing out because they didn't have what they needed within. So we talked about that a little bit, and we also talked about pornography. Some people you want to have some little spice in your marriage. You got to have some spice. You're a spice girl, or you're a spice boy. Yeah. Or you're a hot boy. Yeah. Spice girls, hot boys, there was groups. Spice girls, hot boys. So you want a little spice in your relationship. So you want to bring up pornography, because it's cool, because the Bible said the bedroom is undefiled. And we have people that are teaching that the bedroom is undefiled, not understanding that when you start talking about the bedroom being undefiled, when you start inviting, and even though you and your spouse can come into agreement because you want to spice up the relationship, you want to spice up your love life, and you think that it's innocent because you're doing it just between you and your spouse. But the only problem with inviting that industry in, if you're talking about bringing fire, that kind of fire in, sooner or later they said you play with fire, you're about to be burned. And you're going to catch on fire, yeah. And I think a lot of times you want to catch on fire and there's no fire extinguisher. There's no fireman. to come and put out what you've just put into that relationship, because these are actors. And I think, and I talked about this last week, I'm giving just a recap before we get into it on the spiritual side. This is the natural side. I'm giving you spiritual and natural, but this side today is going to be so, because I want you to understand why things and why people fail. But we're talking about establishing covenants. You establishing covenants when you watch pornography. And one of the most profound statements and revelations that God gave me about this topic, he said that when most people intertwine when they watch these pornography pictures, so whatever brings them to the state of a climax or arousal, being aroused or aroused, whatever it is, you establish a covenant. So if you like the men, if you like the men part, and that's the thing that drives you and drives your desire up, that's the thing that you establish a covenant. So we just naturally assume, because you're a woman, of course, you looked at the man, and now you're excited. And you think that that's the end of it, and that's not the end of it at all. It's only the beginning of it. And God told me, he said these words to me. He said, they establish covenants with the individual that gave them the arousal. And it's not just them. Most people don't know that when you open doors to this kingdom, when you open doors to pornography, and I'm trying not to go all the way back to Nimrod, but Nimrod married his mother Semiramis, and they've established Baal, Ashtaroth. This is where all this pornography and all this other stuff, it came intertwined because of this. And a lot of times this is where pole dancers come from, because Ashtaroth was a pole. So it dealt with pornography. So I'm going to say something probably deep right here so you won't miss what I'm getting ready to say. Because most people don't know the spiritual side of sexual perversion or sex in marriage, that the spirit of perversion is so strong that you can pass by a strip club. If they have strip clubs, normally they have strip clubs and they have restaurants on the side of the strip club. So you can just be in the restaurant, not in the strip club, but the spirit, that spirit, somebody opened the door for that club to be there. So perversion could be there. So what happens, you can go to that restaurant, and you went to the restaurant and not understanding that the spirit of perversion was there too. So and that's probably one deep thing I'm going to say before we get into our topic, before I say what I want to say. But I'm giving you a recap of last week. You have to be real careful with what you consider to be the bedroom is undefiled. That word defile means not contaminated nor polluted. So you cannot bring other things in the relationship that is sacred, that is polluted or contaminated, or that will cause casualties, or it will cause a ripple effect in the relationship later, because one person may not like no longer watching the pornography or getting excited because they see that this is a door or an avenue for other thoughts and other dreams and other passions. And most people engage in other sexual involvement with other people, with other things, because all of a sudden they open the one door to this industry. And you got to remember that even though these people you're watching these people, they're hired actors. They're getting paid so that you can open the door in you and your marriage. It is something that we don't discuss when it comes to the spirituality of it, when it comes to sex, when it comes to, and hear me, hear this, please hear me, because I talked about intimacy. And I think we get intimacy and sex confused.
I don't know how.
Okay. Some people think they're one and the same. Intimacy starts with a conversation. Intimacy starts with you cooking. That's a part of intimacy. Intimacy starts with me getting you roses, without it being your birthday, without it being Christmas, without it being some kind of anniversary. It's intimacy. Intimacy if I come home and I clean the whole house. It's intimacy. It's intimacy because intimacy is what the other person desires. It's intimacy, and when you can give intimacy, then sex is a result of you being intimate with that other person. Intimacy starts with the stimulation of the mentality, of the mind. That's what intimacy is. It's intimacy. So after there's intimacy, then intercourse comes as a result of the intimacy that took place. But some people are looking for sex without intimacy because they don't know what intimacy is.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So that's like a recap. But today I'm going to give you, would you want to say something, honey?
No, I don't. Let's get into the topic.
Okay, I'm gonna dive into the topic today. So you're gonna have to stay with me today. If last week you was with me and you heard some of the things I said and it challenged you, if I what I just explained to you today, if that challenged you by you looking at the individuals just watching pornography and you thought that it was safe, if you just looked at that and thought it was safe, and then end up you having soul ties with the individuals that you watch. And let me say this. If I asked you, I said, have you ever been engaged in an orgy? You would say, of course not. I would never. Would you engage your partner with another partner? Well, that's what you're doing when you watch pornos.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You engage in an orgy. You inviting other people into your relationship, into your marriage, into the sacred place where you and the person that you married, they became one. So you inviting orgies. You're having orgies because it's not just you. You bringing every other spirit from that industry and that industry in your home, in your marriage, in your mind, because whatever stimulates the mind, wherever the mind goes, the body will follow. The imagination is the most important thing in a relationship, in the marriage. Because before you marry that individual, you have to see yourself marrying that person, so the mind have the person to commit after they've imagined it in their mind. So does it with the mind with marriage, which establishes the covenant. So does with the mind, with the imagination when you're watching pornography. There is no different. Because whatever establishes in the mind establishes the reality, establishes the covenant. And I truly believe that this is one of the things that we truly have to be careful of. So I'm going to read this passage of scripture. We're going to dive into it. We're going to jump in, and then we're going to try to jump out of it so that we'll get an understanding. And I'm only using this scripture tonight as in reference to pleasure being gone out of a relationship. So tonight we're going to talk about sex part 2, but what happens when you're challenged in sex to where you lose your desire? How do you lose your desire for your spouse? How do you lose that place of intimacy? Because I've seen some people in relationships, I've talked to some people in relationships, where they lose the desire with their spouse, and then they get a divorce, and then they get back in a relationship, and they desire don't change. They desire, all of a sudden, it intensifies and it's increased. Well, why? What happened in the old relationship? Nobody cheated. Nobody did anything wrong, but they lost their desire. So I'm going to read this scripture real quick, and we're going to dive into this topic, and I'm going to show you a couple of things. I'm going to read it from Genesis chapter 18. I'm going to start probably in verse 11. Now Abram and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah with the manner of a woman, which means childbearing. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I not have pleasure? Shall I have pleasure? Shall I have pleasure with my Lord being old also? Now, I'm not talking about us losing the desire of old age because we got old all of a sudden, because they even have things nowadays that people pay for and cause them all kind of heart issues because they're taking pills that's called Viagra, And they got all kind of other creams and herbs and all that stuff that people are now taking, all kind of wigs and toupees that people are putting on to stimulate their mind in order to do stuff. Wigs. They got all kind of massaging creams for the mind, all kind of stuff that people are using nowadays. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to use that as a backdrop as it being old age. Yeah, I know. As it being old, because age is always equated to time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm bringing it back to a reference to where people can understand because of time, because of the constraints of time, something had transpired in the time. Not because of old age, not because of malfunctioning of the bodies. I'm not talking about that being you being up in age and all of a sudden you don't have the same desire anymore. But that's not true at all, because sometimes when you get in certain relationships, we're unaware of attempts and attacks that will take place in an individual's body. Just as, let's just say this, for instance, a person can die of a heart attack. In the body of Christ, we are known for our bodies being attacked, livers being attacked, mind being attacked. You're talking about people that have dementia. So bodies can be attacked. We know that. Like you can rebuke the devil. You can have somebody pray. I mean, even the Bible in the book of James, I think it's in James chapter 5, where it talk about as with the elders. If any of you are sick, it said, let the elders anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord, and the prayer of the sick, and those that pray in the prayer of the sick, they shall be healed based on prayer. So we know that there are certain attacks that can take place within our bodies, that the enemy can attack cells, he can attack muscles, he can attack you with stroke. So we understand that the enemy can attack our bodies. Because we see all throughout scriptures, the woman that was bound together for 18 years in Luke chapter 13. Where T.D. Jakes developed a conference called Woman Thou Loose. Jesus said, woman, Satan had done this to this woman. So we know, based scripturally, that the enemy can attack bodies. And Jesus rebuked it, and all of a sudden the woman was made whole. All of woman, thou art loose from these infirmities. So we see that there can be infirmities and attacks on the body. So if that can take place or transpire with physical sicknesses, well, what about libido? What about testosterone? Libido is where a woman has her sex drive.
Right.
To where she can, I mean, I know you in the medical field, so you've been knowing about a little medical here, a little medical there. So if that's the case, why wasn't this introduced to us? And why don't we know that the strategy of the enemy, the Bible said that we should not be ignorant of the enemy devices. But the real question is, the first question I want to ask you tonight before we go into any deeper, why are we ignorant of this device to where we are attacked in these areas with the libido and with the testosterone? How is it that can be? How could this possibly be? And we're unaware of it. So when we have these challenges or difficulties with erectile dysfunctions and uterine problems. So how do we not know that this is a device when it comes to marriage and us being intimate?
Well, I can definitely say I have to give the natural and the spiritual all together. So I would say on the natural end, let me start with the spiritual. On the spiritual end, there are many people have different mindsets of how church is, and they are more religious or something like that. And they don't think the enemy will attack libido. Oh, I'm just getting old. Oh, my mama had it. Oh, it's not this. If it's not heart, lung, liver, brain, or nothing like that, then they don't think it's the devil. They think it's truly something natural. And it's like, oh yeah, it's just the time, and I'm losing my eggs. I don't have millions of sperm cells like I used to when I was younger, or whatever. So they are stuck in a mindset of religion, and the religion that has them thinking that it's not the devil trying to steal this away from them, that they're quote unquote aging, and my mama had it, my daddy had it type situation when they were my age or whatever. And on the natural end, it's more so like how we look at everything else. You know, we see the devil try to steal stuff from us, you know, physically. You know, it can be something as small as, you know, people with diabetes and, you know, their toes or something like that. You know, yes, you need to eat properly. Yes,
Right.
you need to have that mindset and understand about, I am quote unquote diagnosed with this issue. I'm not going to do myself in harm and sitting there and eat 500 cakes in a week type situation. I am going to take good health, you know, into consideration. Yet I'm going to pray against those
Type
issues.
situation.
I can't say it. I'm going to pray against that as well. And that's what we have to remember, that we have to know the natural, but we have to live in the spirit. And if we live in the spirit with the mindset of understanding what goes on in the natural, so you won't say, oh, you won't do, I'm going to eat these cakes like this or whatever. I have a bad routine of eating if you're diabetic or whatever. And, you know, because quote unquote, diabetes is supposed to decrease males' sperm cells and
Count,
their issues with erectile dysfunction, and decreases women with their libido and all this or whatever. So, you know, okay, yeah, that's what the man say, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray. And in prayer, you have to, God will come to your mind and tell you, look, this is how you need to start eating, and don't drink this, and don't drink all these sodas, don't eat all these cakes. Eat healthier and do right by your body, but you need to start praying. Praying against those spirits, praying against those soul ties from your past, because you never know, those soul ties in any door, any rat door that you have left open from your past is there. And you don't know, you don't realize it until something sparks it. You know, it's not like, and not until, you know, you see your old girlfriend walk by and you like, whoa, wait a minute, something is still there.
Mm-hmm.
You need to close the door to the old girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
You need to close the door to the old boyfriend.
Jawbone.
You know, and leave Jawbone Jaleesa.
Leave Jawbone Jaleesa.
Leave Jawbone Jaleesa where she was, and you know, leave her there and close the door to that past. Because if you don't close the door to the past, guess what? It's going to manifest itself in the future, in your present. You trying to get right with your wife and doing everything. I got married, now I'm married, and you know, we living good, we have a good life. 3-4 years later, we had a child, whatever. But here comes Jawbone Jaleesa. Jawbone Jaleesa walk by on Facebook. She pop up like, man, what? And then you feel something down there that you don't feel down there for your wife.
Yeah.
So then that's when that problem with the erectile dysfunction comes up, and it ain't like you ain't nothing wrong with you because you got up for Jaleesa. So why you can't get up for your wife?
Yeah.
And that tells you right there that it is a spirit, that it is a soul tie, that is a door that's left open from Jaleesa. Close that door. You know, if you gotta burn the door, burn the wall, pray into the Holy Ghost, fasting and praying to get rid of and to decrease those issues and problems that you had from your past, you need to do it. If that means you gotta go on a 10-day sabbatical and wear ashcloths and
sackcloth and ashes,
sackcloth and ashes, or ashcloth, sackcloth and ashes, and you know, dump yourself in some charcoal or whatever, and put all the charcoal on your face.
Yeah, you got.
I went to the
Old Testament.
yeah.
Job with the Job. You got to tell them you're playing.
Right. So you know, nowadays you don't have to wear the sackcloth and ashes, but you do need to pray and fast. And sometimes a fast will cleanse you of those issues, and you talk to God just like you talking to anybody else. You know, right now you talk to Him, Lord, I have this issue, I have blah blah blah, whatever it is. You purge it unto Him, so meaning that you are emptying yourself of the issue and the past relationship. Now you're empty. Now what you got to fill it with? Prayer, worship, and then asking God to fill you with more desire for your wife than Jaleesa. You got to know how to do it. And those are it's a simple step. You know, like you baking a cake, you know, get the pan out, get the flour. All right, to get it out, pray, fast, empty yourself, and then fill yourself with the most holy faith. Having God to come into your mind, your body, and your spirit, and to cleanse you of all the issues and problems of your past, so you can close those doors, so you can never look back. So when Jaleesa walk by or pop up on Facebook, Instagram, or whatever social media site you're on, when she pops up, guess what? Nothing is going to be there. And then after that, you were like, no, let me delete Jaleesa off my Facebook. Whoever friends with Jaleesa.
Block her.
Block. All that's blocked. I don't want to see nothing, because she probably still dropping it like it's hot. Get her off of your Facebook page. Go forward. I didn't purposely, but I canceled my my old Facebook. And it wasn't like that, you know, I had ex-boyfriends on there. Oh, I did. Yeah, so I'm glad I did cancel it, because I forgot he was still on there. And then I got rid of all of that. And then when I moved forward, guess what? They trying to come in and ask me, can I be my friend? No, I can't be your friend. Cancel, whatever it's called. Delete. No, and that's what you got to do to Jaleesa. When she pops up, delete. Cause then they try to put it on the Facebook, put it on there where this named person was friends with you on this account.
Mm-hmm.
So then let me see if you want to be friends with this person. No, delete. And that's what you have to constantly do. Delete in the natural as well as in the spiritual. Praying, fasting, and asking God to delete all those soul ties that you have. It may not be just Jaleesa. It may be Jaleesa, Lisa, Karen, Angela, Renee. They from around the way. Get all of them out of there.
Okay.
Get them all out of there. It may be a lineup of them. All around the way girls and the jawbone girls. Dish them to the side. And I'm not just speaking to men. You know, you can have the dudes, you know, for the women as well. Whatever the dude is, get them out.
Ralph, Ricky, Bobby, and Mike.
Yeah, all of them. Bobby, Ricky, and Mike. Get them all out. You ain't got time for cooling it down, whatever.
My prerogative.
It ain't no more prerogative. Get them all out. Because it holds you and keeps you in bondage. And that's what the enemy desires us to be, in bondage. Not physically bound like in jail, but bonded in our minds. So if our minds are bonded to something of the past, it's going to put a anchor, like you do in the sea. The anchor is going to hold you there as a voyage. And you're just going to be sitting there. You think you're moving and going, but you're just going from left to right, and never going forward, because he got your mind bonded in that anchor in the ground. And you got to let it go. You know, like the song say, let it go. Cut those ties, cut those soul ties, and purge yourself of it, and allow God to fill you with his spirit.
You know, one thing I want to say too, to both parties, male and females, don't create a Frankenstein. Because I think we try to take the best parts of, and then what we normally do when it comes to people that we still have soul ties to, we measure the last person based on the person that we have. Because if the person doesn't meet up to the person standard that we have presently, then we try to discuss if Bobby just had. Bobby is a good provider. Bobby he's diligent. Bobby works hard. So I love Bobby. But Bobby doesn't make me feel like Robbie. Robbie made me feel this way. But when you talk about Robbie made me feel this way, but since Bobby doesn't make me feel this way, Robbie he makes me feel this way, and then I got the lobbyist. The lobbyist was here. He was spontaneous. And so we try to put one person, and we go Frankenstein based on our sexual desires, and if that person don't meet our sexual desires because of those soul ties and those connections that we have, then the relationship and the love life and the intimacy in that relationship dies, because everybody else that we had previously lives. And how could, and this is what I find all the time, that when it comes to sex, period, we love the person and we gave the best of them to the ones that left us? How can you give the best of yourself, the best of you, to the person who left you, and then you give the least of you and to the person who stayed with you? And you don't have that desire anymore with the person that's left with you, because you gave the best to the person that left you, because there's still some kind of soul tie and there's some kind of connection when it comes to not intimacy, but when it comes to sex. So the libido can be attacked by the enemy when it comes to sex. And what normally happens when the libido is attacked, this is what happens. Let me tell you why there's divorce in marriages now. Let me explain it now. Because when those issues take place, when the hormones appear that they are invading a person's life, what happens here is the attack that most people don't know. That all of a sudden, because a desire is not met at home, they may desire intimacy. They may desire sex. So they may not initiate sex. They may think about somebody. And let me tell you how the enemy works, okay? If he attacks your libido, he attacks your sex life at home. He's going to have somebody that's going to come to you, that's going to talk to you, but not be aggressive with you. Because in aggression, you will see the attack coming with aggression. Oh, no, she's too aggressive. And I'm going to tell you this. If somebody is trying to give you them, if they're trying to sell you them or give you themselves, what's wrong with them if they're trying to give it away? Yeah, what do they have? If they're trying to, ain't nothing for free. So if somebody is trying to give it away, what are they trying to take from you if they're trying to give it away? So let me go back. So the enemy, he works on the sex life of a couple, of a husband and wife. He works on the sex life. Just hear what I'm saying. He works on the sex life in the individual life. He makes sure. Now watch this, and I'm going to say this. You'll know if you find the person that's anorexic. You'll know what the deficiency is of that person. They're malnourished. And so the enemy, what he does, he makes sure that individuals, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to sex, that the people in that relationship is malnourished. So you can see when a person is anorexic. So what his intentions are is for somebody to see that deficiency and try to feed that person until they become full of that other person. And it all starts, hear this, with the eye gates. It all starts with you looking. I told you that the Bible said the enemy is subtle. When he came to Adam and Eve, intimacy didn't start unless a conversation was engaged. So every time a person will cheat in their mind or a person will get in their bed, it starts first with the conversation that invaded that person's mind. The Bible said Satan didn't come aggressively, he came subtly. He came subtly. So, and he came with somebody that Adam named. Adam named the serpent. So a lot of time when the enemy isn't trying to engage in a marriage to destroy that marriage, to establish another covenant, he comes with somebody that you name. Named as a friend, named as a co-worker, named as somebody who went to your church. You name that individual, and listen to me, the only thing the serpent had that was venomous was his tongue. And you got to be careful by people that talk with a forked tongue.
Absolutely.
Because they know what God said about marriage, period. So because of that, you're stimulated with it in your mind. And so what happens in the relationship when it comes to marriage, because there is a malnourishment, somebody's not getting the sufficiency that they need in that relationship when it comes to that area. So the person sees the deficiency and supplies the person what they need. First, they start with stimulation. Stimulating the mind before any physicality, there's spirituality. Spirituality starts with the imagination. So the Bible said, if you just happen to look, if a man just happened to lustfully look at a woman, then in his mind, he is already committed to fornication. So the fornication started in the mind. Well, why would God say that fornication, he fornicated? Why? Because the Bible said that what a man thinks in his heart, so is he.
So is he.
So if you slept with the woman in your mind, if you can imagine yourself, how you going to tie up into a figure four? Yep. Well, okay. Well, I can't say the other part about women. I got to be careful. Well, this is Spirit Radio. This is Spirit Radio, and we speak freely here. What you plan on doing to the individual once you get your hand, but you think about it in your mind. So because you have thought about it long enough, you have become it, because in the spiritual realm, that's when the naturality, it brings things and it births things in the reality from the spirituality of something. You didn't marry me. You had to see yourself marrying me first. So when you saw yourself marrying me, the body followed where the mind agreed. So, and that's what normally happens. And then the problem that we have, when you finally engage in being intimate with your real wife, you're thinking about the person you thought about in your mind. So these are things and doors that we don't know oftentimes that open when it comes to relationships, when it comes to marriages. And if the wife or the husband don't have a desire, why don't they have a desire? So my question to you is, how do we raise an awareness that when something like this is transpiring or going on? I mean, if you had, what was the man named Indiana Jones? If your husband was Indiana Jones before, Indiana Jones sexually, if he was Indiana Jones and all of a sudden he become Pee Wee Herman or somebody, I mean, yeah, I'm just saying, and I'm using that because all of his fight is gone.
Right.
And if one person was Jane, Tarzan and Jane. If she was Jane, and all of a sudden she lose everything about her desire to be intimate with her spouse, what do you do in situations like that? I know we're going to pray about it, but how do we raise an awareness? And I think this conversation tonight is about raising an awareness that when these events take place, when you can find that people lose their desires for love and get married again and then go into heat. Because dogs sometimes go into heat, but it's seasonal. So how is it that we can raise this awareness? How can we get people to pay attention to this thing spiritually? Because sometimes these are spiritual attacks. It's not nothing happened. I know times sometimes because we work different places. You know, we work long hours. Sometimes we can miss. Sometimes we can be tired. We can be exhausted from work. Sometimes we got school. Sometimes we got the children. So how is it that we can stay involved and in a fight when it comes to our libido and our testosterone? What can we do to secure our relationship?
Well, as you was talking, a lot of stuff ran through my mind, and I thought about so much. And you know, I like steps. So I think the first step is being cognitive of what's going on with you. Before, if it's you, if you are the person.
Can I say this? I know you. I'm calling you big word. Because even though I understand what cognitive means, the consciousness, can you explain what cognitive means for those people? Because I know you big word, so big word. Can you break the word cognitive down for our listening viewers and our watching viewers tonight?
Cognitive is being the in the tense that I'm using it is being aware. Being aware of what's going on with you. You know, if you are the person that's being I guess
deprived?
No, not deprived. The one that's being infected
with
the low libido or you know, the
Testosterone.
decreased testosterone or whatever, if you are the person that has an issue, you have to be aware of what's going on. You know, like when your wife come up, if you the husband, or your husband come up if you're the wife, and it's like they're ready to be intimate with you physically, then it's like you don't have that desire. So you are aware of what's going on with you in that issue, and I think the first step is being honest with yourself, being aware of what's going on and being honest with yourself. Then 2, you need to go to your spouse and tell your spouse, I need to communicate. I need to talk to you. We need to talk about an issue that I'm having. I don't have a desire to do, whatever it is, that's causing you to have that low libido or low testosterone. I don't have a desire of that or whatever. And in that communicating that to the spouse, that spouse should then turn to you and ask you, what's going on? Well, why, what do you think is going on? Is it something that we need to pray about? And the answer should be yes. Mm-hmm. It's something that you should pray about. And then from there, the person that is infected with an issue should communicate. Yes, we are, can have sex, or whatever. However, if I don't want to, don't get mad at me because I don't want to. That's the point that you have to, that's that open line of communication to where you feel comfortable telling your spouse, I don't feel like it, tonight or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm having issues. But you have to then come to grips with yourself and then pray and ask God individually. I know y'all praying as a unit, but then ask God individually, Lord, what is going on? Why am I having this issue? What is, my problem? Or you may know your problem. Because Sister Soulwater walked by you at work and your Johnson's all ready to fire.
Johnson &
Johnson ready to fire.
They ain't the shot. That's yeah. Ain't the shot.
It's a shot, but it ain't the shot for COVID. Yeah. But it's ready to fire and go whatever. But then when your wife walked by, it's like,